Welcome to Best in Class. My name is AJ Madden. I have the honor and privilege of helping individuals and organizations become best in class at what they do. Today, we have a very powerful guest. I'm extremely honored and excited to introduce Dr. Nate Zinsser. He's an expert in the psychology of human performance who consults to individuals and organizations seeking a competitive edge. He has been on the forefront of applied sports psychology for over 30 years. His latest book, The Confident Mind, a battle tested guide for unshakable performance, became an instant classic in the field. Dr. Zinsser has been a regular consultant to the Philadelphia Flyers and New York Giants for 12 seasons and a keynote speaker for General Electric, Facebook, McDonald's, Staples, Reader's Digest, Major League Baseball, and the NBA, as well as a consultant for the FBI Academy and the U.S. Army World Class Athlete Program, mentoring 4 Olympic medalists. Since 1992, Dr. Zinsser has directed a cutting edge applied sports psychology program at the United States Military Academy's Center for Enhanced Performance, personally conducting over 17,000 individual training sessions and 700 team training sessions for cadets seeking the mental edge for athletic, academic, and military performance. Dr. Zinsser has a PhD in sports psychology from the University of Virginia. Dr. Z, welcome to Best in Class. Honored to have you.
Delighted to be here, AJ. Thanks for the invite. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, excellent. And I can personally attest to the power of Dr. Z's work. The book is incredible, The Confident Mind. Like I said, instant classic in the field. It's a must read if you want to perform better. If you don't understand Dr. Z's teachings and his tools, in my opinion, there's no way you're performing at your best. Now, I can also personally attest to Dr. Z's one-on-one coach. He's been an incredible coach and mentor, and in a very short period of time, his ability to create earth-shaking improvements in your confidence in performance, I imagine, is absolutely one of the best in the world. So, with that being said, Dr. Z, what are 3 of the best things someone can practice daily to improve their confidence? Some nuclear weapons that I've personally learned from you. Top 3.
Okay. We have to start with the understanding that confidence basically has rather little to do with what actually happens to one, but everything to do with how one thinks about the things that happen, how one interprets, internally processes, or even filters all of their experiences uh, in the world. How you think about yourself, how you think about your work, how you think about all the things that happen in your work, all those thoughts and memories and visions and things that you say to yourself collectively, that great pile of mental activity really constitutes your confidence. Your certainty in any situation is the ongoing running total of your thoughts about that situation. So, confidence then becomes a matter of being rather selective about how you think, ensuring that you are constructive in how you think. And that's what really makes for an effective attitude, an effective mind, and that is what creates confidence. So, to get to your question, what are the things that people have to do? Well, you got to be darn careful about the memories of your past that you hang on to and define yourself from. Secondly, you've got to be equally careful about the ongoing stories about yourself that you tell yourself. I'm good at this. I have trouble with that. You got to be very careful about that. You got to make sure that the stories that you're telling yourself are encouraging you to move forward rather than encouraging you to sort of limit yourself. Oh, I'm not good at that. I can't get that right. I always have trouble in these situations, X, Y, Z, things like that. And third, you have to be just as careful about the pictures, the little video clips that your imagination produces about things that have not yet happened, about your future. Are your thoughts about yourself, both the thoughts about your past, the thoughts about your present, and the thoughts about your future, are those thoughts consistent with the level of performance that you actually really want to have? And I ask that question to a lot of people, and most of them scratch their heads and with a little bit of sober reflection say, no, my thoughts about myself and my work and the things that happen in my work are only maybe 20, 30% consistent with how I actually want them to be. And then the other 70, 80%, I'm recalling memories of disappointing performances and setbacks. I'm telling myself stories about myself that kind of limit me, and I'm entertaining visions and little videos in my mind of things that I don't want to happen. Okay, well, let's attack that. Let's change that proportion of sort of 20% constructive, 80% destructive. Let's see if we can get that to 50-50, and then maybe we can swing it in the other direction. Those are the weapons in broad stroke, AJ.
Oh, beautiful. Well, there's $1 billion question right there. Are your thoughts consistent with the performance you want to have?
Yes,
That's a billion dollar
that's a
question.
$1 billion question. And a lot of people are they've never thought to ask themselves that because they've never considered the actual role of their ongoing memory process, their ongoing internal dialogue, and their constant ongoing visualizations about the future. They've never considered the importance of all of that on their emotional state and hence on their physical body and hence on their execution, whether we're talking about serving a tennis ball, performing a neurosurgical procedure, or conducting a negotiation or a standard business conversation with a team member. They've never considered the importance of their thoughts in that long-term process.
When I wrote down this next question, I thought that this is possibly the most important question I'll ever ask on this podcast. And I know Dr. Z has a great answer to this. And the question is, what are the most important things you would teach a parent to help them increase their child's confidence?
I would teach the parent to first model the kind of confident attitude that you want your child to have, because your child is going to be, your child's going to pick it up. They're sponges on a very significant verbal and nonverbal level. The most important thing I will tell any parent is model the kind of faith in yourself, the kind of constructive attitude, model coming to your own life with a sense of love and a sense of purpose, first and foremost, because your child is going to pick up on that. Okay. Secondly, give your child reasons, evidence to believe in him or herself. You know, they struggle to ride the bicycle, they struggle with their multiplication tables, they struggle with um, handwriting or any physical activity. Just break it down with them, let them see progress, remind them of their uh, past successes, however small they may be, and be very, very patient and come from a place of love so that your child gets to learn, gets into the habit of looking for his or her own evidence of ability. So I got two things. Do it yourself and then teach your kids to do it.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Thank you for that, sir. And I know that also applies if you're a school teacher or a sports coach as well, correct? Or a
Oh,
manager, same process,
absolutely,
correct?
absolutely. If you're a team leader, if you're a coach, if you're in a position of supervision, your job is to bring out the best in the people that you have working for you. Well, will you get them to look for their best and be conscious of their best? I mean, you can hold people to a high standard. You can make corrections. You can hold people accountable. Um, but you can do that without being demeaning or without being uh, overly negative. It's possible to do that, and that is indeed what great coaches do. If we look at the John Woodens, if we look at the Mike Krzyzewskis, if we look even at the Bill Belichick's, the Vince Lombardis, yeah, they were strict, but boy, did every player who ever played for those guys have walk away from conversations feeling, yeah, coach believes in me. Coach thinks I can be great. That keeps me going. I was very fortunate as a young man to be in the presence of a legendary coach in New Jersey. He was a boys soccer coach. I didn't even play for him, but I just noticed how powerful he was able to create this atmosphere of success for his program. And he did it by encouraging kids as young as the seventh grade, stay in the sport, work this skill. You could make it. And so his team was always stacked year after year with, 5 or 6 senior starters, 3 or 4 junior starters, and one hotshot sophomore who you knew in 2 years was going to be the senior captain. Um, And it's that kind of atmosphere. That's what creates powerhouse programs. That's what creates dynasties. It's coaches being able to communicate to people coming up through the ranks. Yeah, you have a chance to be great. Not a guarantee, but you have a chance to be great. Here's what I see in you. Here's what you can develop. Let's get excited about doing this. It's really going to be a great ride.
Wow. Wow. And it's amazing that you weren't even on the soccer team, but you could feel that.
I
And
could
that,
I could feel the self-fulfilling prophecy that was at work in this school regarding this particular team. And no other team had that sense of inevitable success.
mm,
I was rather jealous of it at the time.
that's amazing because you wanted that feeling as well as everyone would when they're in the presence of a great coach, mentor, parent, teacher. You're personally great at it as well, instilling confidence now. Now that's you. You're now that soccer coach who does that with all your clients and thousands of people, and you can experience it with Dr. Z one on one. If you read The Confident Mind, you can, he gives you some just incredible tools to cultivate your confidence. So you can become that kind of leader that Dr. Z is talking about. It's possible, it's learnable. And you can do it in a systematic way, whether it's one on one with Dr. Z or through the book. What are three of the most common mindsets you've seen in the world's best performers like Eli Manning, special forces soldiers? Dr. Z was Eli Manning's mental performance coach for years when Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls, and Eli definitely punched above his weight class, which was just beautiful to see how far he took things. And Dr. Z was right there. What are some common mindsets of, again, these special forces soldiers, Eli Manning? What are they thinking differently?
Well, I think they begin with a certain level of curiosity. What's out there that maybe I haven't uh, investigated that could make me a better athlete, soldier, leader? You know, you have to have a certain open-mindedness. If you go through your career thinking that you know it all, well, it's going to be a challenge to really find out how good you are. So trait number one is a certain degree of curiosity. Um, Second characteristic is a degree of honesty. Oh, I'm not good at this yet. what do I need to cultivate? Do I need to get my feet to move faster? Do I need to understand this particular mathematical process? Do I need to understand equity markets better? Do I need to understand the origin, insertion, innervation, and function of lower extremity muscles better? I'm talking to a medical student. Are you honest about what you need to develop? And then, third, are you patient enough to work it and encouraging of yourself enough to work it and work it and work it, even if it doesn't pay immediate benefits? So we got the curiosity, we got the honesty, and then we got the patience. I think those are three sort of mindset components uh, of people who end up, like you say, and I love that phrase, punching above your weight class.
Mhm. Oh, beautiful answer. I've never heard it put like that. And it really leads into my next question. What are the three key habits? So essentially, what are the action steps somebody could take based on that? Because Dr. Z is big on action. I know that.
Okay. I think action step number one, if you are practicing or studying anything, you approach every practice session, every workout, every study session with a plan. You don't just show up and do what you're told, or in some cases, just show up and say, okay, I think I'll work this today. No, you got to have a plan, all right? You have to, your practice, your study, has to be deliberate. Um, There's a wonderful book out there by the guy who invented the 10 famous 10,000 hour rule, and it's about deliberate practice, practice at a high level that really challenges you, and you got to go into practice or study or any kind of preparation with that kind of plan. So there is an action. Um, Secondly, you've got to be willing to look back on your daily work, whether it's a physical workout, a team practice, or in the case of all us white collar athletes out there in the world, all the CEOs and the managers, etc., you got to look back at your work of the day and search for some evidence that supports your confidence. Okay. You got to honestly ask yourself, okay, did I put some good effort in here, there? Where did I put good effort in? Journal that, write that down, make a note of that. Secondly, what little things did I get right? What little successes or victories did I accomplish today? No, no, yeah, you didn't win the Nobel Prize, you didn't win the Super Bowl, you didn't win the Olympic gold medal, but you might have made progress in a negotiation, you might have made progress in a relationship with a client or a teammate, or you might have even scored a win in terms of, today's sales. And then the third thing that you look at the end of every day is this general sense of progress. What am I getting better at? Am I getting better at communicating things? Am I getting better at understanding a particular marketing strategy or a particular cost structure? What am I getting better at? So enter your work with a plan and then review your work, looking for evidence that supports energy, optimism, and enthusiasm. There are a couple concrete things that people can do.
Oh, beautiful. And we can all start today doing these things. We can start today. We can apply it today. You told a great story about Hugh Jackman and advice he gave to an understudy who had to step in um, at the last minute on I think it was a Broadway play. And I think this is such great life advice for all of us about having fun. Um, I think it's one of the most important concepts in performance psychology, and Dr. Z is an expert on this. Would you mind sharing that story about Hugh Jackman?
Sure. Everybody knows Hugh Jackman as a you know, very successful actor. I think fewer people know him uh, for performing in musicals. Uh, we see him in the superhero role quite a lot. Um, but he was performing in a Broadway musical. Um, and it was during during the COVID years. And so naturally, some of the performers got sick, which meant that the understudies, the subs, had to step into the starting lineup role, take the stage, and execute. Um, and there's a wonderful story that the understudy in The Music Man, a woman who had to study 8 roles, she had to be ready to step into 8 different parts. She was suddenly thrust into the role of the female lead, and she only had about 4 hours to rehearse her part. And Hugh Jackman came right up to her and said, "Look, don't worry about trying to be perfect with everything. Let's just have some fun out there and let's just tell the story." Okay? The truth of the matter is that the audience is going there and is really ready to be entertained. And they're not going to be as sensitive to little tiny perfect, sub-perfect moments. So if you're out there having fun, if you're telling the story, if there's a smile on your face, that's going to be great enough. And she says, that's exactly what we did. And we had a ball. Um, yes, there was blood pounding in my head. There was sweat, but boy, I had a good time doing that. And it was simply because Hugh Jackman said, "Hey, you're going to be fine. This is about having fun. This is about sharing joy." And that's good advice for everybody, whether you're in an entertainment industry or whether you're in, other quote unquote more serious business applications.
Oh, what a great piece of advice. It takes all the pressure off and just lets you perform. And
Uh,
it also reminds me of your workhorse racehorse mentality that, we got to work, work, work to be prepared. But when it's time, when the event is there, the only things we need to be is confident and have fun. That's it,
mhm.
because all the prep is done.
Right.
Showtime. I think Nick Saban, all the greatest coaches do this. Prep, 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 right up till the day. Very tough on performance and preparation.
That's
And
right.
when it's game day, it's showtime. Have
Yeah,
fun, be confident.
you've done the work, you have built yourself up, you've acquired capability. Now let's show it off. Let's release it. Okay. In the case of, say a football team, they work all week. So come Friday night if you're in high school, Saturday if you're in college, Sunday if you're in the pros, that's when you get to release it. Um, the white collar athletes out there, the people who turn the wheels of American business day after day after day, you're very much in a performance mode throughout the day. You think about it, every conversation, every meeting, every negotiation, in a way you are performing, you're letting out, you're releasing your various capabilities. Sure, there are times when you're alone in your office and you're preparing for a meeting. You're putting together the presentation slides or you're making notes for a conversation. There's your prep. But 15 minutes from now, you could be basically stepping into your equivalent of a performance stage or a field, some kind of arena, and now you're letting out what you have. Now it's time to embrace that inner resource, to trust your training, and that's how we see how good you are. It's 2 different forms of discipline, if you will. The discipline to train, the discipline to trust said training. And for a lot of business people, you're constantly moving from one of those states of mind to the other. And you're spending a lot of time as a performing racehorse, as opposed to the pro football player who's the performing racehorse Sunday afternoon for a few hours, but is the very diligent workhorse. Study, 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 practice, 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 prepare, 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 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday.
I love that. I love the workhorse racehorse analogy. It just works. And I know you showed me this a scan of the brain when someone's in the zone, they're not thinking. And when you're having fun and you're just performing like that racehorse on game day or in the presentation day in the boardroom or at work, by not thinking and not overthinking, as you taught me, you can just have fun and be confident at that point. Because if you are overthinking and beating yourself up and worrying, there's no way you're performing at your best. You won't be in the flow state and in the zone. It's a
Sure.
hindrance to
Hmm.
beat ourselves up on game day or when we have to make the presentation or whatever it is. Correct?
Absolutely correct. And that's why, you know, really great performers have made it a priority to minimize the self-criticism, minimize the overthinking when they are in performance moments. Okay. There'll be time for that later, you know. There'll be time for that, on Monday if you're the Sunday football player. There will be time for reflection, sober reflection, and maybe a little honest self-criticism after the performance is over, after you have that meeting, after you've done your presentation. But if there's a little, glitch, or there's even a mistake that you make in the process of that presentation, let it slide, get right back into the next point, just as Hugh Jackman was encouraging the understudy stepping into the female lead. Hey, if you slip or if you miss a note, just stay having fun. Stay having fun. You're going to be fine. It's that willingness not to take oneself quite so seriously, that brings out a lot of their true ability, lets us see the real individual that you are.
One of my favorite philosophies I've heard you talk about is mental toughness is the refusal to let your mind be dictated by circumstance. I
Right.
just love that. Mental toughness is the refusal to let your mind be dictated by circumstance. And you told a story about you have to decide to love the moment. There's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. And I thought that was such a great illustration. I think a friend of yours said that. Can you talk about just the concept in general and maybe the bad weather analogy?
Well, cold weather for those of us who live in the Northeast is a reality in the winter time. Hot weather is a reality in other times of the years and in other times of the country. There are certain things that just are. Um, you know, um, a technology breaks down, or your fleet of delivery trucks seems to have a rash of mechanical issues. Well, these are just certain realities. They're just things that are. There are circumstances that you are now in. How are you going to be in those circumstances? Is a setback of any kind going to really depress your mood? Is it going to force you to think, oh, this is terrible. We have to fix this. Are you going to devote unnecessary mental energy to the worry, or are you just simply going to devote your energy to addressing the situation? Oh, it's cold. I think I'll put a jacket on. Oh, it's windy. I think I'll put a windbreaker on. Oh, it's pouring rain. I'm gonna put some boots on as opposed to dress shoes. It's really as simple as that. I'm going to address a setback. Okay, here we are. The last pass I threw was incomplete. I was off target. Okay, let's see how good I can do now. It's just, let's see what we can do with the moment that we've got. Sure, it can be unfortunate. Um, I know just today, a very unfortunate news story came up. There was an airline collision in Washington, D.C. A helicopter and an airplane collided on a runway. Okay, that's a pretty significant setback for the people who are accountable for, air safety. What can we learn quickly, and how can we make things better? And let's keep our energy there and only devote the minimum amount of energy to recrimination, blame, etc. We've got to be functional, proactive, constructive in our approach.
Functional, constructive, and proactive. And I've heard you talk about that versus positive thinking, which is maybe Pollyanna-ish. And Dr. Z really frames it as constructive,
Yeah, yeah.
proactive. So
I,
important.
I I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but I really don't like the term positive thinking because, as you just said, AJ, it seems to connote, sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. I do not live, I don't think you live, I doubt very few of your listeners live in a world of sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. We live in a world of deadlines. We live in a world of resource limitations. Ooh, some of us live in a world of muscle soreness and blisters, etc. Okay, so it's not all happy, happy, happy. It's what's constructive. What's constructive in terms of creating greater personal energy, greater optimism for our future, and greater enthusiasm about the moment that's right in front of us. That's my definition of constructive. Whatever you need to think that creates the energy, the optimism, and the enthusiasm, that's that's what's important to think. Doesn't necessarily have to be sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, you know? I'm betting that a few people on the National Transportation Safety Board right now are scratching their heads, going, okay, how can we ensure that we do not have another accident like this in the next 20 years? Can we be constructive about that rather than beating ourselves up and pointing fingers and, just sort of getting drawn down into useless, non-productive negativity?
Sometimes I come across people that have a severe perfectionist mentality. They lack self compassion and they really beat themselves up. Now, I think all of us do it to a certain extent until we learn not to, maybe. But some people, it can be severe. But I think for all of us, this is good to know. What are the most common things that destroy confidence? And what can we do? What are your top, few tips to protect our confidence so we
Okay,
don't fall into that trap?
right. Um, you protect your confidence by responding to setbacks, mistakes, errors, simple human imperfection the right way. You have to keep those moments of imperfection in a useful, again, constructive perspective. Something happened. I did something wrong. Okay. I want to keep that experience limited in terms of where it occurred, temporary in terms of how often or when it occurred. And I really want to interpret that as non-representative of who I am and who I want to be. The mistake took place, but it took place in that moment. We can either keep it temporary like that, or we can fall down the rabbit hole of, oh, geez, here I go again. This problem is going to continue. Oh, this problem is recurring. Nope, that problem, it happened, but it happened at that time. That's dimension one, the dimension of time. We keep it temporary. Secondly, we look at that mistake, that setback, that disappointment, that error, and we keep it in the place where it occurred. It occurred in that conversation. It occurred in that room. It occurred on that um, deuce point in the tennis match. It occurred there. If we don't limit it in terms of where it occurred, we can step into the trap of thinking, oh, now lots of things are becoming distorted and difficult. If we don't keep it limited, we sort of by default, we just sort of globalize it and broaden it. So we want to keep it temporary in terms of when, we want to keep it limited in terms of where, and then very importantly, yes, it occurred. I goofed this. I'm going to have to fix this. There may be consequences to my goof, but I am not going to define myself by that goof, by that mistake, by that setback. I am going to interpret it as not representative of me, not the truth about me. It's an unfortunate fact that so many of us have been socialized through our primary, middle, high school, college, professional training careers to identify with our shortcomings, to define ourselves by what we didn't get right or what we fell short of. That's a disservice to self, and that is a disservice to the team that one is on. Yeah, the mistake took place, but it's not the truth. It's not representative. So just those letters, T for temporary, L for limited, N for not the truth. Those are guidelines for the perspective that you need to have when imperfections occur. And ladies and gentlemen, there isn't a situation on the planet, there isn't an individual on the planet that's going to be perfect. We have to be able to protect our confidence by looking at inevitable setbacks and mistakes and human imperfection in a rational manner, rather than irrationally doing the sort of Chicken Little, the sky's falling, everything's in trouble, nothing's going to change, and it's all my fault. That's the depressive triad in clinical psychology. Everything's terrible, nothing's going to change, and it's all my fault. And even people who are not clinically depressed can start going down that rabbit hole. And it's all about being disciplined enough and being compassionate enough about yourself to say, yeah, it happened just then, temporary. Yeah, it happened just there, limited. Yeah, it happened, but it's not the truth. That's my sermon on that one, Coach.
Powerful, sir. Number one lesson from Dr. Bob Rotella, your mentor.
Um, the number one lesson from Dr. Bob was really about that two forms of discipline, you know, the discipline to train, to break things down, to analyze, to work on your weaknesses, and then the discipline to trust the work, to stay with your strengths when it's time to perform. Um, and that becomes a fascinating dance for all of us, looking at uh, the time we spend being analytical and judgmental and careful, that we have to be, and then the times where we have to be more sort of observational and accepting and supportive. If we want to default to a state of observation, awareness, and support when we are performing, well, we better practice that a little bit so that it becomes our habit, you know? And even that football team who is engaged in a preparation process, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, there have to be segments within those practices where they're not being completely analytical, completely judgmental, completely critical. There have to be some moments within those practice sessions where, okay, now let's execute it the way we want to execute it Sunday. And so for that 15 minutes or 30 minutes of practice, it's not analysis, judgment, criticism time. It's awareness, observation, acceptance, support time, so that you're cultivating the form of mental discipline that is valuable ultimately. So I can't thank Bob Rotella for explaining that and having all his grad students really work that process. I was a graduate understudy for 3 years, and it was a heck of an apprenticeship. I'm very, very, very grateful for that.
You share two really special, powerful stories at the end of The Confident Mind. One about a bus driver and one about a general. And what a great way. I mean, they're great stories. Would you mind sharing those?
Sure. Um, the bus driver. This was an experience I had in my grad school days. I went to a national physical education conference in the city of New Orleans one year. Um, and it was held at a very fancy hotel convention center. And being a somewhat impoverished graduate student at the time, I didn't really have money to stay at this, 3, 4 star hotel. But luckily, I knew some folks in New Orleans that I could stay with. And so I did just that, which meant I had to ride a bus to get to the convention center for the actual conference proceedings. And so there I am on the street corner at the appropriate time, and here comes the right bus along, and the doors open, and I walk up, and the bus driver looks at me like I'm his long lost best buddy. Good morning. How you doing? Great to see you. I'm going, "Oh, okay. I'm fine, dude. How are you?" Southern hospitality is one thing, but this guy seemed like it was over the top. So I sat down and the bus picks up and 2 blocks later it stops again and he gives the same treatment to the other people who get on. Good morning. How you doing? Great to see you. And I guess this is just the dude's vibe. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, well, maybe he needs to switch to decaf. I don't know. Um, and at one point, the bus pulls into a larger street and it picks up speed. And the driver looks in the rear view mirror and he says, "Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day in New Orleans. I hope you're all having a good day. If you're having a bad day, change your mind. Have a good day." And that hit me right in the face. I mean, here I am, a graduate student in the study of human performance, the psychology of human performance. And here's a bus driver who is delivering a message of such simplicity and clarity and purity. And it's like, wow, it just blew my mind. You know, I I never knew the man's name. I only rode that bus a couple times, but that just made a ridiculous impression upon me about the power to change your mind. You think about how often we hear the phrase, "Oh, I changed my mind. I decided to have this sandwich rather than that sandwich for lunch," or "I decided to wear these shoes rather than those shoes," or what. We change our minds all the time. But the idea was that we don't just change the content of our mind, but we change our mind in the way the bus driver was suggesting. Do you change from, "Oh, I got so much work to do, it's really hard," to, "Well, let's see how much of this I can get done"? Do we change from, "Oh, we can't seem to score on these guys," to, "Okay, let's keep hammering. Let's dare them to stop us." When you change your mind the way the bus driver was suggesting, you really engage a whole different process. And it's so freaking powerful. Um, I was kind of disappointed at first when I realized all this because I figured, man, this guy's got me beat.
Hmm.
This guy's better at the work than I am. And then I changed my mind about it and I thought about how wonderful it was that the people of New Orleans get this cheerful message every day. And years later, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans, all I could think of was that guy is operating a shuttle bus or a jitney or a van, and he's helping people evacuate.
Hmm.
He's helping people. Um, it's just a really powerful story. Change your mind. It's not impossible. It's very doable. You just have to give yourself permission. And then that brings me to the general. General Robert Brooks Brown, when he was a colonel during the Iraq War, he had to deal with a very, very unfortunate incident. A Al-Qaeda suicide bomber detonated a vest in a crowded mess hall where General Brown himself was seated along with his U.S. soldiers and a whole group of Iraqi soldiers. And this suicide bomber detonated his vest, killed, I think it was 22 people, wounded 100. 8 of those casualties were General Brown's soldiers, and that made it the worst day of his life. He was blown across the room. And if the suicide bomber had stood up from the table where he was seated and then detonated his vest, it would have been even more destructive. General Brown probably would have been killed. But despite it being the worst day of his life, he had to go out that very night and perform missions. And his soldiers had to go out that very night and for months thereafter and perform their missions to accomplish what they had set out, protecting polling places throughout the city of Mosul, Iraq, so that the Iraqis could have a little taste of representative democracy. Um, and he told me that, you know, confidence, faith really takes practice. You've got to you've got to set your mind right over and over and over again, even during and especially during the worst moments of your life. So if we put the bus drivers change your mind and the generals, you got to do this over and over and over and over and over again, even when life hands you a steaming bowl of crap, that is what makes for confidence, and that's what makes for effectiveness and value in the moment. So you got to change your mind and you got to be willing. You got to be willing to change your mind, like the bus driver suggested, and you've got to be willing to do it even under the worst of circumstances. And every one of us has the human free will to do exactly that. That's the challenge that we face and can embrace one day at a time. I hope your readers can enjoy those.
If you're listening and you haven't ordered The Confident Mind yet, what are you waiting for? I will put a link in the description to the book on Amazon, and I get no commission from this, so I have no skin in the game. Well, all I can say is, out of the hundreds and hundreds of books I've read on performance, there's a very short list that I could count on less than one hand that I say you must read, and The Confident Mind by Dr. Z is one of them. It's great because it doesn't read like a textbook. It is very practical, and you can apply what you learn today in the book. And he gives all kinds of great tools. I also highly recommend, if you can, working with Dr. Z, if he's got the capacity and the space to do it one on one. Not only is he a world class expert at what he does, arguably, the best in the world, he also deeply cares about helping people get better, helping people perform at their best, and to live a better life. So I can't recommend him high enough. Dr. Z, where can people find you and your work?
Um, Really, really simple. Um, I have a Gmail email address, nate.zinsser@gmail.com. I have a very simple website address, natezinsser.com. You can just Google me up like that. My very simple website will be available, and I would be delighted to hear from your listeners. Thank you so much for the testimonial, AJ. I'm in your debt.
I mean, it's been life changing for sure. Working with Dr. Z is life changing, and I wish everyone would definitely read the book and reach out to Dr. Z to work with him in some capacity. It will change your life. Um, I know it, as it's changed mine. So, Dr. Z, thank you for the time and the wisdom. Thanks for everything you've done for me personally, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Looking forward to it as well, AJ. My best to you and my best to all your listeners.
Thank you.